I faked an official blood sample to save a military pilot from court-martial. I was an ER nurse on a military base. There was an accident during training. Yes, it happened all day every day, but this one, it was a flight incident. Flight incidents are a big deal. People die and multi-million-dollar aircraft are destroyed. This accident was no different. My patient was the pilot, who ejected and lived. Others did not. And the accident was considered my patient's fault, so they bring the guy in. He walked in. He was fine. Racked with survival guilt, sure, and we had to do the whole trauma x-ray thing. But I was the highest-ranking nurse in the ER that day. For that reason, the flight incident documentation was tasked to me. And I was to perform the mandated chain of custody blood draw to test the pilot for drugs or alcohol. The room was somber. There had been deaths today. Deaths of people who were close to each other like brothers. The pilot's entire squadron, all his bosses, his boss